I've always been careful when traveling alone, but the Grandview Hotel seemed safe enough, a respectable chain in the heart of downtown. After checking in, I noticed my room was at the very end of a long, dimly lit hallway on the 7th floor. The carpet was worn thin from years of foot traffic, and the fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting strange shadows on the faded wallpaper. My room, 717, had an odd layout. The door opened directly into a narrow entryway, with the bathroom immediately to the right and a closet to the left that I somehow felt reluctant to open. The main room stretched beyond, with a window overlooking the alley behind the hotel. Even during the day, very little natural light filtered through the grimy glass. The first night passed without incident, though I did notice the heating unit would click on and off at irregular intervals, making sounds that almost resembled whispered conversations. I chalked it up to an old building's quirks and tried to sleep. On the second evening, everything changed. Around 2 a.m., I heard soft footsteps in the hallway, not the hurried pace of a late arrival, but slow, deliberate steps that seemed to pause at each door. When they reached mine, they stopped completely. I lay frozen in bed, listening to the silence that felt heavy and expectant. After what seemed like an eternity, the footsteps resumed, continuing to the end of the hall before fading away. I crept to the peephole and peered out, but the hallway was empty except for the flickering lights. I noticed something odd, though. The carpet outside my door looked slightly different, as if someone had been standing there for a long time, wearing down the fibers in the shape of 2 feet. The third night, the footsteps came again, but this time they were accompanied by a soft scratching sound, like fingernails dragging along the wall. I grabbed my phone to call the front desk, but there was no signal. The hotel Wi-Fi had mysteriously disappeared from my available networks too. When I tried the room phone, there was no dial tone, just a faint static that almost sounded like breathing. That's when I noticed the closet door was slightly ajar. I was certain I'd kept it closed, and I definitely hadn't opened it. A thin sliver of darkness peered out at me, and I could swear I saw something move within that blackness. I pulled the covers over my head and waited for morning. The next day at checkout, I mentioned the strange occurrences to the desk clerk, a nervous young man who kept glancing toward the elevators as if expecting someone. When I described the footsteps and scratching sounds, his face went pale. "Ma'am," he whispered, leaning closer across the marble counter, "there is something you should know about room 717. My blood went cold. That was my room number. We've had complaints before. Guests reporting strange sounds, feeling watched, finding their belongings moved. But the thing is, we keep that room occupied because ... He paused, swallowing hard. "Because when it's empty, people go missing from the rooms nearby. 715, 719, sometimes even from the floor below." My hands started trembling as I remembered the footsteps, how they'd stopped right at my door both nights. The clerk looked around nervously before continuing. "The last guest who stayed there left this behind. She checked out in the middle of the night, just grabbed her purse and ran." He slid a crumpled note across the counter with shaking fingers. In desperate, shaky handwriting, it read, "There in the walls. They watch through the mirrors. I can see their eyes reflecting back at me. Don't stay past 3 nights. Whatever you do, check the closet in 717. There's a door that shouldn't be there. They come through when it gets dark. I can hear them whispering my name. I realized with mounting horror that I'd never actually looked inside the closet, not once during my 3-day stay. I'd hung my clothes on the bathroom door instead, something I never usually do. It was as if some primal instinct had warned me away from that dark space. "Ma'am," the clerk said, his voice barely audible, "what's today?" I checked my phone. "Thursday." His face went completely white. "You checked in Monday night. Today would have been your 4th night. The note had said 3 nights. I was already past the deadline. As I grabbed my luggage and hurried toward the exit, my skin crawling with the sensation of being watched, I caught a glimpse of the elevator opening behind me. Inside stood a man in a hotel uniform I didn't recognize. The fabric looked old-fashioned, like something from decades ago. He was holding a master keycard, and when our eyes met, he smiled at me with far too many teeth, yellowed and sharp. "Checking out so soon?" he called after me, his voice echoing strangely in the lobby. "Room 717 gets lonely when it's empty." I ran through the revolving doors and didn't stop until I reached my car. As I drove away, I looked back at the 7th floor and saw a figure standing at the window of room 717, watching me leave. The room I'd just vacated. The room that should have been empty. I never found out who or what had been staying in that closet, waiting behind that door that shouldn't have existed. And I never want to know.